Hi everyone, Mike here. Thanks for joining me for another Art Journal page start to finish video. This time we're looking at Journal 52's week 30 prompt, which is called A Road Less Travelled. So once again, I'm working in my Strathmore mixed media journal and I'm doing a double page spread and I'm covering the whole thing with a nice thick coat of gesso, which I will heat dry to make sure it's nice and set and not going to move when I start applying my first coat of colour. And for those that are interested, this video is speeded up to twice its normal length. It took me just under an hour to do it from start to finish, and once edited I've got it all the way down to around about 24 minutes, so it's not too long, but again not too short either. So out comes the heat gun and I'm going to give it a real good blast over, as I say, to make sure it's all nice and dry. And I've also removed my two polypropylene page protectors, and I'm just having a bit of a tidy up and a bit of a wipe up because I did get some of that gesso on my worktop. So I'm making sure that everything's nice and clean and ready to move on to the next stage. So just using a standard HB pencil, I'm just going to sketch out some positioning where I know I want to put things on my pages. I do have an idea of where I'm going with this. In fact, it was completely and thoroughly planned out beforehand, which is unusual for me. I had the prompt in my mind and I knew exactly what I wanted to create and the imagery that I wanted to create for this page. So once I've done the outline in the pencil, I'm going to start bringing in my colour, and this is the Crafts Artiste metallic black paint. Not just standard black paint, but this has actually got a little bit of a metallic sheen to it, a bit of mica in there just for a little bit of pearlescent. I do get a lot of questions about what paints I use in my art journals, but to be honest, I have 2 or 3, or actually maybe even 4 different brands of acrylic paint that I use. I have distress paints from Ranger and Tim Holtz. I've got the Dilutions paints. I have some artist acrylics, but I also have some Crafts paints, which are very, very inexpensive and definitely student grade paints, I would say. But they are more than adequate for the job for what I use them for. I don't see the point in buying really expensive artist grade acrylic paints for art journals, because we're not painting, we're just literally trying to create some sort of graphical elements on our pages, and we don't really need to have the best quality paint to be able to do that, and most of the time we end up layering and covering over. So the inexpensive ones are more than adequate for art journal pages, and you don't really need to go out and spend a lot of money on top quality paints to be able to get good effects. Now, the Crafts Artiste range of acrylic paints are very, very similar to the Deco Art acrylic paints. About the same sort of size pot, and probably about the same sort of size in content, and probably about the same price as well once you work out the difference between dollars and pounds. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a roundabout kind of way is, if you're new to art journaling, then don't go out and buy loads of expensive paints. Find a cheap, inexpensive alternative and then test them out, see how they work for you. Art journaling is purely personal, so do what works for you, but don't spend a load of money if you don't really have to. So back to the page, I'm finished with my first coat of black metallic, and I'm just going to give it a quick heat blast to make sure that everything is nice and set again before I move on, because I don't really want any of that paint to move, and once acrylics are dry they are permanent, which is the beauty of using them. So now I'm adding a second coat to the black paint using the same metallic paint that I have done already. You can see some patchiness in the black, and I wanted it a little bit darker than that and a bit more opaque. Even though I'm using metallic paint, I wanted it to be more of a solid colour rather than a patchy colour, if you know what I mean. And again, once I'm happy with the coverage of the black paint, I will get the heat tool back on it again to make sure that it is nice and dry before I start filling in any other areas. So now that it's dry, I'm bringing out the matte black paint and some storm cloud white, and I'm just going to mix that with my brush and then apply that in the bottom right hand corner, but I'm actually going to do it in a kind of patchy way because I don't want it to be flat and I don't want it to be all the same colour. I want to give it some kind of texture. So you'll see as I'm painting in a kind of cross hatch way. So I'm going to the left and then to the right and then back again, and I'm not too bothered if there's a variation in the colour because I want it to look a little bit mottled and a little bit uneven. So I'm going to carry on painting the entire of that bottom right hand corner, but you will see me go back again and add some more colour, some lighter colours, some darker colours, and just even it up so that it's all different colours all over. I don't want to see stripes in it, I don't want to see any particular areas that are all one colour, so I'm going to go back in and just even it out, adding in highlights, putting in low lights until I'm pretty much happy with it. And the eagle-eyed of you will have noticed that I have actually painted over the kind of footprint drawing that I did as well, but it doesn't matter because it was really only there as a guide for me to know whereabouts it was going to be, and it's easily recreatable, and I did want to make sure I got a nice coverage of the paint, so I didn't really mind the fact that it disappeared. Okay, so here comes the heat gun, and I have had questions in the past about why I show my heat process, why I actually show doing it, and why I don't just cut it all out because it just lengthens the video. Well, I do it for two reasons really. One, if I edited it all out, then you wouldn't know that I did it. And some people who are new to art journaling wouldn't know that it's a good idea to heat set in between each layer. The other reason is, I actually do edit out most of it. You only see the beginning and the end part. The majority of the actual heat process I do cut out because sometimes it does take a little bit of time to do. So you only get to see like 2 or 3 seconds of it, which, you know, isn't that much. So now that we're all nice and dry, out comes my Dina Wakley fine detail brush, and I'm just going to start painting in that boot print, that shape of the foot that you saw at the beginning, and I'm just going to outline in white first, or using the storm cloud white, which is a slightly grey white, and then I'm going to fill it all in and add in the detail later. So again, another little heat blast of the heat tool, that all important drying off part, and then we can add our next layer of colour and detail. I could never be an oil painter because I'm just too impatient. I need things to dry straight away. Now we're all dry, I'm going to pick up some of the grey paint that I mixed up for the actual surf, or the moon shape behind, and I'm now going to start painting in some of those treads into that footprint. So there you go, you now know what it is. I'm not being too exact, and I'm not being 100% careful as to getting it exactly even on each line and perfectly spaced, because it doesn't really need to be. You only need the impression of the treads, and I will be adding in a little bit more detail with a black pen later on. So like I say, it's just an artist impression, not photorealism. So now we're done with the inside. I'm going to add a little bit of paint just on the outside, just to tidy up of the shape just a tiny little bit. And then we're going to heat set and then move on to the next step. No pun intended. So when we're all nice and dry, we're going to start adding in some more detail into the sky area, and using the same brush and the same white paint again, I'm just going to add in a disc of white, which is going to be a base layer, because I'm going to paint over the top of that. And I've done it on the left hand page. Don't forget the book's upside down. On the left hand side, to add balance to the double page spread, so the footprint's on the right and my big disc is on the left, so it does add a little bit of weight and balance to the other side. So I'm taking a piece of scrap paper. I think this was one of my jelly prints that was lying around. So I'm just going to tear off a mask using some of that jelly paper, and then I'm going to bring in some more of that white paint and just filling in that, because I did actually catch some on the paper, so just want to remedy that before we move on any further, and then lay that piece of paper as the mask over my moon section, and then I'm going to add some water to the storm cloud paint, and then I'm going to start splattering the background. So just using a pencil just to tap with the brush, I'm going to just lay down some layers of random splatters of white across both pages, making sure that I get both large and small splatters across and an even spread right the way across both pages. I seem to have a thing for sky and space themed pages recently. It just seems to be calling to me through the void. Perhaps I'm being called home. So once again, the all-important heat blast to make sure that all those star fields and splatters are all nice and dry, because you can't do the next step without smudging them if they're not. So a quick cleanup's in order, just get rid of all that mess, because we'll no longer need the white and the black and any more grey paint, because we're done with that now. Now it's time for a bit of colour. So out comes the Dilutions, and this is the, I can't remember what this blue is called, cobalt blue or something like that, not quite sure, I'll have to look it up. Or not, it's called London Blue, there you go, it just came to me in a flash. So all I'm doing with this is using the same brush again, and I'm just adding another base layer of this London Blue Dilutions paint over the top of the white. Now the reason I added the white is because I did want to make sure that the blue stood out and didn't, or the black underneath wasn't affecting the colour of the blue, because I did want it to be really, really vibrant. And again, I'm going to give it that all important heat blast to make sure that it's 100% dry before I add any more colour on top. And my next colour is the green, which is the cut grass, and I'm going to add in some of that detailing on my blue planet. Now we're just adding that little bit of green that shows that the earth is alive. Now again, I'm just doing an artistic impression of the earth. I'm not making sure that all the land masses and the continents are as they should be. I'm only giving it just an impression of being a living, breathing planet. So once again, the all-important heat tool, making sure it's all super 100% dry before I can start adding in my ice caps and my clouds. So to paint in the ice caps and the clouds, I'm just going to use the same white I used before, which was the off-white, which is the storm cloud. You could use gesso for this if you've got it on hand. You could use any white paint, it doesn't really make any difference. And then to add the clouds, I'm just going to stipple some of the paint over the top, just using the tips of the paintbrush. So I'm going to leave those to dry on their own, and out comes the football pen, or as I've been reliably informed, it's actually called a foodie ball, but there you go. You tell me if it's different, I have no idea. I'm only reading it from the pen itself, and I'm going to use that just to draw and put in some of the detailing on the boot print itself. So again, I'm not being 100% trying to make sure that I get everything. I'm just giving it an artistic impression all the way around, if you like. And if you ask real nicely, Mike might even just show you a close-up of that pen. There you go, he must have heard you. So that's just about it for our base layer. So out comes the letter tag Dymo machine, and I did say I was going to be using this quite a lot in the next couple of videos because I've just fallen in love with it. It's just such a brilliant tool to use for art journaling, as well as labelling and keeping yourself organised. So I've just typed out my quote on there, and it's now just printing it off, and I'm just going to give it a snip, pull it out, and then cut it into two, and then lay it onto my page. And as it's self-adhesive, it just sticks straight down without any bother whatsoever. And that's just about it for this page now. All I have to do to finish off is what I normally do, and that's stamp the date and give it a quick sign, and then I'm done and dusted. So out comes my stamp and my data, and I've set it to the 3rd of August, which is the date when I actually did this page. I'm just going to stamp that on the bottom right hand side of the page, and of course it never stamps properly. So I'm just going to fill in the number 3 with my pen and then just sign it, and then we're done and dusted. So that's it for me for this one. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give it a thumbs up so that YouTube know that you want to see more from me. If you haven't enjoyed it, give it a thumbs down. But all importantly, if you haven't subscribed already, you can do so now by clicking that subscribe button right there in front of you. See you again soon.